Good evening and welcome to this virtual meeting, our first ever budget meeting we're doing by virtual means. So we're hoping there are a number of members of our community who are tuning in either via Zoom, via Facebook Live. It's an opportunity for the public to ask questions tonight regarding our 2021 budget. The council has met twice formally to discuss the 2021 budget. We made I think pretty good progress, but before we finalize the budget, we want to make sure we give the community an opportunity to provide some feedback and to answer any questions. So the process for this, and I apologize if we have a few glitches along the way, because even though we operate our council meetings in this manner and we've all adapted to this virtual way of operating, it's the first time we've done one in a public forum like this where we're getting participation from our citizens. So I assume anybody who's watching, if you haven't already done so, you can join through the link on the town's website. It's attached to the agenda. Anyone who's watching, please ensure that your microphone and camera is turned off. All microphones will be muted by our IT coordinator until it's time for you to speak. Obviously, we don't want a bunch of background noise from everyone's homes coming into the meeting tonight. Click the raise hand, so in the upper right hand corner under the reactions tab of your toolbar, sorry, the bottom toolbar, you can put raise hand or raise your hand. We will be, a few of us will be watching for hands raised, and when we see raised hands, we will ask you to present your question. I'll ask you to mention your name and then your question, and then myself, another member of council or member of staff will be available to answer the question. So one question at a time. If you have another question, we'll put you back in the queue. There's also the chat opportunity. So if you hit the chat button, if you don't want to ask a question in person, you can use the chat method, and staff will be following that to ensure that those questions get answered too. As well, if you're on Facebook Live watching this, then you can enter your questions there. Again, staff will be monitoring that to ensure those questions get answered as well. Our intention now is to proceed until 6:30, and hopefully by that time we've answered any questions that are coming forward. So moving ahead with the agenda, finally, just please exercise consideration and respect for the audience. Obviously, unsuitable language will not be tolerated. We'll reserve the right to mute someone if actions or behavior is inappropriate. Questions will be directed through myself. Questions and comments must be related to the 2021 budget. If you have questions that are not related to the budget, you can reach out to members of council or staff at another time. And be mindful of your surroundings. It's a live meeting. It's posted on YouTube, Twitch, of course, the town's Facebook page. So with that, we're going to move ahead, and our treasurer, Janet Kozeel, is going to present the 2021 budget.
Thank you, Mayor Panko. So I believe Dave was going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation for me. Thank you. So as Mayor Panko had indicated, we're here this evening to do this virtual as opposed to an open house, which we've done in the past few years. So hopefully this will go well. So next slide, Dave. So I just wanted to give a bit of background of the guiding principles to prepare this. As we all know, the annual budget is one of the most important municipal policy documents that council needs to deliberate and to approve ultimately. And it serves to identify the priorities for the year and provides the financial resources to deliver. So budget development was guided, and this commenced probably in the August of last year. So that's when we start working on the working papers in the background. But the budget development is guided by the fundamental principles endorsed by council, namely a status quo approach as it relates to service levels and the town's strategic priorities. Just a bit of background, we have done several rounds of service sustainability reviews, and that has resulted in about $482,000 in operational cost savings. So since 2016, when we implemented our long-term financial plan, we have had a shift in our capital budget philosophy, and it's investing in reserves to fund for future capital. And this does require a more disciplined approach to financial management. And our ultimate goal is to use debt in a physically responsible manner. And we also realize there's need for competitive property tax and users fees. Next slide. So again, this is just a bit of a summary on the process. As noted, the long-term financial plan, the asset management plan, and the water financial plan, which those came in in 2016. We are currently working on updating the water and the wastewater financial plan. Again, council priorities, staff review their departmental master plans and public input. We did a survey in September, and now we are doing the virtual open house. And ultimately, the budget deliberations, as John had mentioned, there was 2 drafts as well as a budget guideline meeting, and we aim to have the approval done by February 1st. So next slide. And again, this is just a synopsis of the various strategic priorities within our plan that goes from 2019 to 2022. And we attempt to capture as much as we can in our capital summaries within those 6 priorities. Next slide. As mentioned, we started in August preparing. September 14th, we posted the 2021 budget guide and the pre-budget survey. It was our first time doing that. We did have 12 respondents, which was attached to the budget guideline report for council. And it was part of the documents that we posted. So October 5th, we had our pre-budget meeting before council, and November 23rd, the first draft, and December 14th, the second. The third draft is scheduled for January 18th. We hope to have the first and second reading on January 25th and aim to have it approved by February 1st. So next slide. And again, as noted, we did prepare and have for the last, I believe it's 4 or 5 years, completed this budget guide. So next slide. And this was developed to help residents understand how the town of Smith Falls operates and manages its finances so they can provide informed input to council on long-term financial planning and service delivery. And it provides some basic information about the operations of the town, its budget principles and processes, as well as relay some basic budget facts. We feel strongly that informed citizens are more engaged and more likely to participate in the budget planning process. And a high level reference for residents to use during discussions about why the town does business in a certain way. Next slide. So this year, as other years, there are definitely expenditure challenges. This year, for instance, higher insurance premiums. There was a 20% increase to our premiums that equated to about $61,000. Continuing demands to provide funding to outside agencies and groups, community donations, and a CIP program, that's about $345,000 in this current draft. An employee compensation, negotiated union contract adjustments and benefit adjustments. The increase in payroll is approximately $400,000 from 2020. Within that, our group benefits, originally we anticipated an extreme increase of about 10%. That has since been reduced to about 4%. So cost of construction and supplies, that typically is higher than CPI. CPI to the end of October is 1.1 for 2020. And cost of construction, supplies and materials is usually, as I indicate, much higher, around the 3%. So aging infrastructure and pressures on staff resources due to growth. Next slide. And again, revenue challenges. About 55% of our revenue stems from taxation. So again, we do realize that is an issue. So we try to use those, try to keep those regionally competitive. Part of those increases are driven by transfers to capital reserves. The potential increases to utility rates, ultimate goal is to be self-sustaining. Unfortunately, currently we are still being subsidized by taxation, approximately $662,000. And again, unpredictable funding from other levels of government. This year we have had our OMPF, which is an unconditional grant of about $3.5 million that has been confirmed, as well as some funding for capital. And again, that was confirmed, but after we initiate the budget process. So next slide. So the action thus far from the first and second draft, as per council's direction, it still remains in the budget. The proposed rate increases, as I indicated, the CPI, which is 1.1. For water and wastewater, that equates to approximately 57,000. Taxation equates to about 158,000. From the first to the second draft, council has asked that we include the Smiths Falls Perth hospital donation of 174,000 and increase the community improvement plan to 30,000 and ask staff to go back to do some further deferrals on the proposed capital budget. So next slide. Currently, the draft operational consists of about 25 million, transfers to capital reserves 2.3, and the offsetting revenue is about 27.7. And again, I did want to denote these are subject to change prior to the third draft because we are still doing some minor tweaks to the operational budget presented next week. And the next slide. This is just some highlights of what's on the current draft of the capital budget. Some construction work on Lombard and Abbott, Cornelia, Condi, a purchase of some equipment for public works and sewer lining. For the 2021 capitals, approximately 59% is coming from reserves. And again, to denote the transfers to capital reserves is 2.5 million. And I believe that is the end. Next slide, I believe is the end of it, Dave. Yes. I'll leave it at that if you had any questions.
Very good. Thanks, Janet. So at this moment, we will open the floor up to questions from the public. We do have some questions we received via email so far, but if there's members of the public who are present and would like to ask a question, please turn on your video and mic and raise your hand and we will address your question. I'm looking to see if there's anybody here at the moment. Councillor Brennan, you're upside down. On my screen anyway.
Gymnastics.
Okay. There, oh, you're hanging from the ceiling. Okay. We will, I'm going to go to the questions we received. And the first question received relates to animal tags and animal licensing and fees. And I think Director Costello can probably read the question and provide some insights.
Thank you, Mayor Panko. I believe the question was regarding the fee for animal tags, both dog and cat. And just a note for council that now that we have our new animal control or bylaw enforcement officers, we will be looking at the animal control bylaw and all the fees associated as well as fines associated with the animal control bylaw will be reviewed probably by the third quarter of 2021.
Thank you. And microchipping, we have very modest fees there as well. We've had microchipping clinics also in the past. COVID has impacted that. Do we see those coming back in the future? And can you help explain, I guess, the rationale behind microchipping our pets?
Certainly, we do have a kind of a partnership with our local veterinary clinic to hold microchip clinics every year. The hope with the microchip clinics is that when animals become lost or stray, that they're able to find their rightful owner very quickly, thus reducing the cost for shelters or for the animal control officers, period. So that will be looked at as well as part of the overall research review of the bylaw, Mayor Panko.
Great, thank you very much. And we have a second question we received, which relates to operations regarding the Russ Beach Montague Smiths Falls Airport. And the question reads, the town allocates a substantial amount of money in the annual budget to the Russ Beach Airport. It's rumored that these costs may increase substantially in the future as infrastructure costs increase. Can the airport be more efficiently run and at less cost to taxpayers? And bold it is, given the financial burden of supporting the airport, may increase in the future. Has any thought been given to exercising more scrutiny oversight of the operations? And it was a few more comments. Is the airport charging non-residents enough for various services offered? Perhaps a comparison with other small airports is warranted. Could result in cost savings. Is it true there are no fees for landing and departing? How does this compare to other small airports? Is a profit being made on the sale of gas? If not, should it be? Is it possible to publish a list of the membership, where they reside? So I'm going to go back to the floor and ask if there's any members of council who would like to address that question. And for some reason, I don't see everybody on my screen.
Mayor Panko, it's Jay.
Okay, Jay, there you're here.
Yeah,
Yep,
it's a great
go ahead.
question. And as Councillor Alfred and yourself know, we're currently in discussions with the Flying Club on the agreement that we have with Montague, or we and Montague have with the Flying Club. So those issues are that's a good question. And in fact, if you look at the budget line, I think it's $40,000 and or thereabouts. CEO Morris can correct me if I'm wrong. It's around there. And so the value of the airport in an economic development point of view is there. The agreement is from 1992, so indeed it's time to look at that again, and we're doing that. So,
Thank you. Any further comments? Yes, Councillor McKenna.
Just as Councillor Brennan said, those are really good questions, and I hope they can be forwarded to Councillor Alford, yourself, and Councillor Brennan to bring to the table for those discussions.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Councillor Alford.
Yeah, we'll be able to better answer those in the coming weeks. I think I would say, though, that the Smith Falls Flying Club operate or manage the airport for the two municipalities, and have done so for quite some time, and in a very capable manner. There is, I think, some changes that we all wish to make to that old agreement, and I would like to see those questions be able to be answered more fulsomely once we conclude our conversations with Montague and with the Flying Club themselves.
Thank you. If there's no further comments on that question, I will move on to the next question we received, relates to vacancy rebates. And it reads that instead of giving tax breaks for empty buildings, would the town consider creating a vacant home tax similar to what Toronto is doing? And I'm looking to, looking for a hand. Councillor Alford had her hand up. Councillor Alford? Or...
It's kind of fortuitous that this came up, seeing as how we were just talking about this a couple of meetings ago. When the vacancy rebate was introduced, we were in a much different economic state than we are today. And council has asked that that be put on the agenda in the coming weeks to discuss whether or not the vacancy rebate should continue. In terms of creating a vacant home tax, I don't know a lot about that, but I don't think we have many homes that are vacant either. So that is maybe something we could incorporate in our discussion when we discuss the vacancy rebate itself. I don't know a lot about a vacancy home rate at tax rate at this point.
Okay, thank you. Treasurer Gosile, perhaps you can also bring some insight here, because this is, or CA Morris, this is something that was reviewed and some changes made a few years ago with the previous council that have impacted where we are today.
Well, I can give you a bit of a background on the vacancy rebate. The policy was implemented in 2018. Since then, it's dramatically gone down. The 2020 subtotal for vacancy rebates was about 18,000. Prior to that, about 31,000. We have reduced our 2021 draft amount for vacancy rebates in light of that to about 30,000. Now, as far as the vacant home tax, I too didn't know much about it, so I did a bit of research. Toronto, I believe, is proposing 1%, Vancouver 3%. I did ask our tax collector if there's any way of tracking vacant buildings. She does not, but in lieu of that, I spoke to our utility billing clerk, and she does run properties that are at zero consumption. Some of those are for other reasons, but we thought we might be able to get a handle on the number. I would personally think there aren't a lot of vacant properties because of the state we're in right now, as far as people are chomping at the bit for rentals and so on, but it's something we can do more research on for sure.
Thank you. Any further comments from anyone? Okay, we'll move on to sorry, just before we leave that one, Janet, 5 years ago, somewhere in there, what was the vacancy rebate at that point? It was pretty significant, was it not?
Yes, I have been tracking it since 2007, the highest being in 2012, it was 208,000. The closest to that was in 2016 at about 149,000.
So a very significant number.
The lowest was in 2017, believe it or not, for $650. That was it.
That's where we're headed. Councillor McGuire, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Penko. Thanks, Janet. Do we know if most properties that get the vacancy rebate time out of it, or they stop getting it because they fill up?
Part of the new policy dictates they can only maximum get it 3 times, I believe, for commercial and 5 times for industrial. So
We're going to way out of it. Okay. Again, any members of the public who have a question, feel free to turn on your video and mic, and we'll pick it up. But
Mayor, I think CO Morris had a comment there.
Okay.
Thank you for that. Yeah, in response to Councillor McGuire's question, I think when we come back with a review of the program, we'll provide some statistics and some history on the program. But certainly, since putting the time restrictions on the program, and of course changes to the economy, we've seen that policy change, and it's going in the right direction for sure. To put the vacant home tax in some perspective, Vancouver raises tens of millions of dollars. Toronto estimates that they'll raise between $55 and $66 million a year in such a tax. But the difficulty is enforcing it, understanding which properties are vacant, and how do you enforce that and follow up on it. But so in some areas where there's a lot of real estate speculation going on, it works very well. But again, we're seeing low vacancies here at this time in Smiths Falls. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next question submitted. Regarding playground equipment, replacement cost of $100,000 in the budget. Will there be consultation with parents and children? And will the new equipment be accessible? And I assume Director Manhire, this falls within your wheelhouse.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there will be consultation with each neighborhood as we go through this process. The accessible equipment is a whole different ballgame. We try to make as much of it accessible as possible, but as an example, an accessible swing is approximately $30,000 in and of itself. So what we do is we try to look at design that incorporates the needs for that community, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that the needs for each community are reflected in the apparatus that we buy.
Thank you. Art, while we've got you, can you speak to Council's strategic priority regarding improvements in all neighborhood parks?
So that is a strategic priority that was established by this council when it came into office. And what we're looking at is we're looking at each of the parks. We did a Parks and Recreation service review that identified all of the assets. We've got conditions of those assets, but we can go through and determine where our best opportunity is. And we use that in making the recommendations for council going forward. So it's definitely a quality of life piece that council has seen, and we're looking to try to support through through that endeavor. And we do have parks that where demographics have changed over the years. We're trying to reflect those demographics in the park assets that that are available to people that live in that area.
Thank you. I'm going to switch over and go to a question we received via the chat from Caitlin. And has MPAC determined when they'll be conducting the next assessment of Smith Falls properties in whole to address the inequality between new homes and older homes? Smaller new properties are currently costing much more in taxes than larger older properties. And this is I guess an exchange that I have with actually Treasurer Treasurer Cozio today. Janet, could you perhaps provide the first answer to this one?
Certainly. So the last 4-year cycle was valued on January 1st, 2016 valuation. Tentatively, the next one will be based on January 1st, 2019. The pandemic has delayed that, as we know, for 2021 assessments, and that too could revise when that valuation date may change, depending on how long this is delayed or deferred.
Thank you. Any comments from council on this question? So I will just add in, I think that we're sensitive to the realities that there are a new home being occupied today is going to have a market value for taxes based on current values, or more reflective of current values.
Mayor Pankow.
Yes.
My apologies. I wonder if you're having a hard time seeing who's got their hands up and who doesn't.
Oh, I did. Was your hand up?
Yeah, it was. And I'm sorry. My question actually doesn't relate to this question, which I think Janet gave a thorough answer on, but rather back to the question about accessibility and park design, if you don't mind.
Well, okay, I'll just finish my comment on this and I'll come back to you on that. So I think we are sensitive to the realities that there is disparity and really we're relying on MPAC having to update valuations. And when they do update valuations, we recognize that the valuation of probably every home in town today is much higher than what the current assessment shows, other than maybe some newer properties. So when they do come in, it'll also be a phased-in approach to adjust those assessments. So it will take some time, and I suspect it'll be at least another cycle or two before we get there. So Councillor Dwyer, I'll go back to your comment.
Thank you, Mayor Pankow. So the question that was raised by the resident included a component of accessible design in assessing play structures, and I think it's a valid one. And I think it's right to point out that the province of Ontario has mandated municipalities to abide by the Ontario Accessibility Act. And I'd just like Director Manhire to confirm that we will indeed be installing play structures that are fully compliant with the AODA.
Through the chair, absolutely. And one of the things that I didn't mention earlier, but is very relevant to this as well, is that we currently have a consultant that's developing our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. And we've kind of worked on the preliminary timeline for that. So we should have that. There would be public consultation with that piece as well. But we should have a plan by mid-year. So we're hoping that that plan also helps inform that process. So we look at the whole thing in terms of what the requirements are and what the needs are, and then develop our plan based on that.
Thank you, Mr. Manhire. But just to be clear, any play structures or apparatus that we will be installing will be fully compliant with the AODA requirement.
There would be no point in putting something in that is not compliant.
Thank you. Councillor Allen, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to add to that. I mean, over the years, I've gone to a number of conferences on this very thing, and outdoor play parks are certainly being promoted, and I think they're best for children. Even schools now are looking at having areas that are outside, physical active areas, not play structures. And I think when you look at the cost of replacing play structures and how soon they become not safe, it makes much more sense to create an outdoor park that's got lots of play that's accessible for all children. Children love outside and they love interacting with sand and nature and trees. And I think we'd be better off to look at those kinds of parks than investing in play structures that don't last very long. It's just my thoughts.
Thank you. Councilor McGuire.
Thank you. I was wondering, could we get a rundown of what the tangible improvements have been over the last, where we are to date with that? Because I think we put money in the budget for it in the past, and I just would be interested to hear what that was.
Right, so we've added a number of different assets to various parks, Lower Reach probably being one that has taken a significant amount of those resources, where we put in the outdoor fitness equipment, the bocce ball courts, the seating areas, some of those types of assets that enhance that area as well. So, and we've done some improvement to other structures along the way, just as a piece to kind of bridge us into the redesign. So we also have purchased a couple of different play structures that this year we did not get into place because of COVID restrictions. And those are actually at the Public Works Yard and will be installed this coming year.
Thank you. Any further comments on this subject before we move on to other questions? I don't see any. I'll move on to the next question we received. Question regarding shelters for dogs. It was originally in the budget of $30,000. What is, or was, or will be this?
And Mr. Chair, it's actually not a shelter for dogs. It's the shelter for people using the dog park, so that they can stay out of the rain and the sun. So that's.
Doesn't mean dogs can't use it.
Well, dogs could use it, I guess, if you would like, but really it's more for the experience of people bringing their dogs to the dog parks.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Brennan?
Yeah, I think that the shelter is a great idea. However, this year probably not the best time to do it. And just for a little history on the dog park, when the dog park was started, and Councillor Allen and your worship will remember, there was a piece of land there that was donated, and there was a committee set up. My wife and I were part of that, and we came to council at the time and said, if we raise X amount of dollars, will council match it? And that happened. And so, I know that the dog park is a significant asset for the town, and it is well used even now, and it's well respected by the dog owners. So I look forward to a shelter for people to get out of the weather, but it probably, this year is probably not feasible, but I'll put that seed out there. And for the questioner, I think we raised $14,000 or $15,000 in the community, and council was good enough to match it. So, that's another idea, but I certainly support a shelter there, but we're in COVID, so we have to take a little water with our wine. And,
Thank you. And coincidentally enough, I was looking at some pictures over the weekend, and I came across pictures I took the day of the opening of the dog park, and we were there with our much younger Australian Shepherd Jack at the time, and the social interaction between the dogs was, it just really spoke to the volumes as to why that was such a great idea. So thanks for your leadership on that, Councilor Brennan. Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay, I'll move ahead into our next question is regarding the Centennial Bridge, Confederation Bridge. Ottawa appears to be gearing up to take advantage of a federal stimulus program that would result in the revamping of the Prince of Wales Bridge. Is Smith Falls saying the same for the Confederation Bridge? Yes, CEO Morris?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So So just a little background on the Prince of Wales Bridge. It connects downtown Ottawa with Gatineau. And there's been discussions for some time about reopening it in some form or fashion. And I think the intent is to open it to pedestrian and cyclist activity. So it is, of course, an interprovincial bridge and quite a long one at that. But the similarities with Confed Bridge is that they've identified monies in this year's budget for a municipal class environmental assessment, which is exactly what we're doing with the Confederation Bridge. So we have monies in the budget for that. The environmental assessment will options, and there will be a public consultation component of that to arrive at the recommended solution. So we're going down a similar path, I suppose, as Ottawa is doing. So I would suggest that we need to get through that process, identify the best option or the option that the community wants, and then we would seek out funding opportunities at that point.
Thank you. Director Dunlop, you had your hand up as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe CA Morris has covered most of the points regarding the path forward. Again, we'll be looking to fulfill Council's strategic plan objectives of having that decision rendered in 2022 or 2021. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, so that's it for the questions that I think were received ahead of time. There's no more questions in the chat. I'm not sure if Director Costello's received any questions via Facebook Live. I know she's monitoring.
No, nothing's come through yet, Mayor Panko.
Okay. I'm going to do a bit of a roundtable here. We've had our budget consultations. We've given direction to staff as to what we believe is a suitable change in taxes to 1.1%, reflecting CPI, Consumer Price Index. We've made some capital cuts from the budget to get it to what we believe is the suitable number. So I'm just going to give members of council an opportunity just to speak to elements of the budget or to share any thoughts they have towards what we have planned for 2021. I'll go by show of hands first to see who wants to be first one up. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank everyone who submitted those questions. They were just terrific. Actually, it's not a bad format, even in non-COVID times, to get these kind of questions. People are not always comfortable coming to a big public meeting and standing up and asking a question. So I really encourage, and we've got another week, email any one of us. We would love to have those questions come in, even after today. What I would comment on the budget in the 2 years I've been here and my experience in my former life is I really believe strongly in solid planning. And I think the town has a good strategic plan. I also learned since coming to municipal politics about asset management plans. So those are things like the buildings we own, the roads, the equipment we own, the water towers, all of the assets that the municipality is responsible for. And what I've learned over the last couple of years, and I'll keep stressing along with my colleagues, is the long-term view. In the past, I think provincial and federal governments would look to the next election, and that's as far out as they could look, was maybe 4 years. I really encourage the citizens and municipal governments to look very long-term. I don't want to hand a problem to a council in 10 years that we couldn't have started putting money away in our capital related to asset replacement and repairs down the road. So I really encourage the public we're looking not just in this year's budget, we are part of this, and a big part of it is looking 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. The bridges we need to replace, the equipment we need to replace. So I really ask us to, part of what we're trying to do is put that nest egg aside for the next generation or a future generation. So I know it seems peculiar, costs are higher than they the costs of doing that are add to your tax bills, but there's a very good reason. And so I just, it's something I can't stress enough is thinking about the long term and not just what's going to happen in the next year. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dwyer.
Thank you. Just a comment to say that, you know, I've been a resident of Smiths Falls for 10 years, and I feel like we've made astronomical upgrades in our budgeting process in the last 5. And I think to Peter's point, we've become much more fiscally responsible about planning for the future and planning strategically for upgrades and replacement of assets that we're going to need, so that we're not caught surprised at the 11th hour. I think that there's a lot of very, very exciting projects covered off in this year's budget. Parks upgrade, of course, is I think the one that every member of council unanimously is supportive of and ready to endorse in full support. And I'm hoping that perhaps we could model our public engagement for that around the model that we see tonight, because I think in 10 years, this is probably the most engagement I've ever seen at a budget meeting, which is really exciting. You know, it's exciting and refreshing to actually have a community that's engaged in asking questions and feeling comfortable in doing so in the model that we're using. So thank you to staff for pulling this together. And hopefully we can continue to model public engagement around future projects such as this. The other big projects and big questions that I think we're going to be faced with in 2021, of course, include the life expectancy of Confederation Bridge and our replacement of that. It's also recently been published in the paper about Bruce Litton's big plans for the water treatment plant, and no doubt there will be some public consultation around that as well. So I'd highly encourage members of the public to come out and participate in that. And of course the phase 2 design work for Beckwith Street. So for those who may have forgotten or were not aware, Beckwith Street, despite being complete in the present sense, will be subject to another round of construction to complete between Russell Street and Elmsley Street. So I think that's just kind of a very quick snapshot of the projects that I'm looking forward to seeing as part of the 2021 budget. And like I said, I mean, hopefully we can keep the momentum going with public engagement.
Super, thank you. Who's next? Councillor Allen? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, no, I was nodding my head as Councillor Dwyer was talking. I've been here with a few of you for, this is my 10th year going into my 11th year, and I think we can be very proud of those reserves that we've been working on. And I know under the leadership of our present treasurer, she's given us direction that has put us in a place now where, even though this is going to be a very tough budget to look at because of the added expense of COVID, all of the things that we've spent or have had to use as expenses were important. Keeping people safe and that sort of thing, and not running programs when people might not have been safe. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. I, for one, hope we keep the hospital donation as what the ask was, and I'm glad to see that it's in the budget, because I think of all the years to not look at decreasing our donation, this isn't one of them. And I'd just like to take a minute to applaud our treasurer, because under her guidance over the last years that she's been our treasurer, I always feel I understand it. She goes into a lot of extra depth to make sure that all of us, even myself, who's not an accounting major at all, I have an understanding of it, and I appreciate the hard work she does. And thank you for all of you listening. I know some of you aren't going to ask questions, but are listening, and I hope that you continue to follow it. It's not going to be an easy next week, but it's something that we'll do, and I think we'll get good progress. Thanks.
Thank you. That leaves, okay, Councillor Alford.
Yeah, I'm super excited for the next 2 years. Certainly this budget, the past 2 years have been challenging, exciting, but I feel that this council has followed its strategic plan, and it's very gratifying, I think, for all of us to see some of those things that we planned on the first days that we were in council show themselves. I'm getting backfeed, so I'm hearing myself. I don't know if that's any better, but I've turned my volume down a bit. So I'm like Councillor Dwyer and Councillor Allen with regard to the parks. We advocated in that first strategic meeting for more wild play, which is something I think we will continue to ask for and till it comes to realization. I think this is a fair budget. In light of COVID, I'm actually grateful to our staff, grateful to my colleagues on council, grateful for the understanding of our taxpayers. This has been an extraordinary year, and yet even with all the challenges, this council, this staff has been able to move the ball forward on the strategic priorities that we have. So I think it's remarkable given a global pandemic and things that no one could have ever anticipated, that we've still been able to do the business of the town and move the town's agenda forward, and in responsible ways. And I think that this budget reflects that. Everybody didn't get everything they wanted in this budget. Each of us had our own things that we were felt passionate about. And we've heard from our taxpayers about some of the things that they feel are important. And I hope that they see that we're trying to address, or we'll be addressing those in 2021 and 2022. So I'll leave it there, but I think this is a fair budget, and I hope the taxpayers have confidence that the staff and their councillors are attempting to do it to fulfill the promises that we made in 2 years ago, whatever that seems like, a million years right now.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan. You're still upside down though.
No, you're upside down. No, I mean, we still have third reading to go. And I appreciate the questions we had tonight. My always, as everyone knows, my mantra is always affordability for people. I think if we follow through on what Janet presented tonight, I think we've done that. And I look forward to going forward with some of the stuff that's in the strategic plan, i.e. the bridge. I mean, that's key infrastructure. And the good part of that is with the EA, it's going to be public engagement with it. And so, I want to hear from we have 3 options on that, and I want to hear from people what they think. But overall, I think, in a COVID year, and we had some bad news today, and no one's going to be going out for a while. I think we've done amazing things. I want to congratulate you, Mayor, for the Mayor's Task Force that we put together, and I think over the Christmas time, we did some amazing things in terms of supporting business. That's going to continue, and I hope that the upper tier will recognize the challenges ahead for the businesses in Smith Falls. But and to echo Councillor Dwyer, this format is so accessible to people. So, and I think it should continue because, and it needs to, because even if no one else comes and no other questions, we need to do our due diligence in terms of consulting the public on everything we do. So, look forward to the third reading, and we'll see what's in the third, what's presented to us. I know staff have done an amazing job, and I look forward to supporting the budget.
Great, thank you. Councillor McGuire, I'll give you a chance for a few words.
Thanks, Mayor Panko. Cut me off. My connection's a little iffy tonight. First, I'd like to thank Dave and anybody else on the IT team, and CEO Morris and Treasurer Cozio and Director Costello, Director Manhire, everybody that was in, I guess, Dunlop too. This is really cool because we've never done this before, and it was effective. We got more questions than we've got during my time going to these meetings, and it's been awesome. Smith Falls' first AMA. I'd really like to thank Treasurer Koziel specifically, though, whether it's dropping off report at the fire hall so it can be picked up after hours, or answering those questions that in hindsight might have been straightforward. She really has gone above and beyond, like Councillor Alwyn has said, to as a new councillor get up to speed on this, because it's a complicated topic, lots of data and numbers to process, and I appreciate all the effort that staff's put into that. The questions I thought were great tonight. We got things like the dog tags in the airport. You know, it's good to see that our residents want to know that we're getting value for money and that these programs are delivering. I think it'll be interesting to see the reports that'll come forward in 2021 on that. The tangible improvement in parks, I'd like to see a little bit more bang for our buck going into the next half of our term as we get to the end, because I think there's still a lot of opportunities for improvement there. And the MPAC assessment is the one I feel the most pressure on budget-wise, because that's the inequality associated with the MPAC assessments across town are what really limit us, where we've got segments paying a significant portion, and an average of 163,000 doesn't really reflect current property values. So hopefully we can put more pressure on MPAC over 2021 to get some movement on that, but it doesn't seem like we have many tools at our disposal in the meantime. Off the top of my head, that's all I've got for tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. And I think one thing that we can be thankful for is the growth we've had. And if it wasn't for the growth in new assessment, so that's new construction, new homes, new commercial industrial built construction, that has added to our assessed value, which is added to our tax rolls. And without that, we would have a much more difficult time trying to bring in a budget with a 1.1% net increase to our taxpayers. And that is with no change in assessed values this year to the individual property owners. The 1.1 is what people will see. And in contrast, I mean, many municipalities around us, we know the city of Ottawa, I think it's committed to, I think, a 3%. I think the county was actually a 3% combined with growth and tax rate increase. So it's, I think we're delivering fair value for our constituents. And I know that over the last 5 or 6 years now, I think the biggest increase we've had has been the rate of inflation in a year. I think we've been years when we've seen more modest increases, and overall, between changes in tax rate increase and increase in assessed values over the last 5 or 6 years, we've been able to bring in a budget which was at or below the rate of inflation. And part of that is, as Janet mentioned, our service review, which started with the previous council, that staff diligently went through all of our operations, virtually everything, and overall knocked about $500,000 off our operating expenses. And that's meaningful. That's really meaningful, and took a lot of work from all of our staff, but we're grateful because $500,000, that's $500,000 a year in perpetuity. And I guess collectively, if we went back and measured that from the start, we're probably pushing $1.5 million to $2 million overall net savings for the number of years that's been going on now. So it's those measures. And to Councillor McKenna's comments, we instituted a long-term financial plan in 2016, I believe it was, and that's where we have that view to the future. And we understand, well, we're trying to be sensitive to the impact we have on our taxpayers today. We also recognize we manage an incredible amount of assets, in excess of $100 million in assets that we know we need to maintain. We also need to, we need to improve the quality of life in our community and plan for the future. And like anyone's individual financial plan, you have to have that long-term view in mind and make commitments and sacrifices today to ensure that there's a better future. And those are decisions we make around the Council Horseshoe to ensure that we put money away, we build capital reserves so that when big items come along, we can afford to do them. And last year's Beckwith Street redevelopment was a great example where we had capital reserves combined with federal provincial grants enabled us to complete a significant redevelopment and in the end complete it within I think so far anyway, I guess we haven't seen the final bill yet, but I believe we'll be able to do it with little or no borrowing. And that's a result of good planning and ensuring that we had the financial reserves in place to look after that. And it's those financial reserves that get us through some challenging times like 2020 when COVID has an impact and there's a lot of uncertainty in how we move forward. And 2021 so far, again, we news today, we know that we're going to be moving into a more restricted environment. More of our staff will be working from home, and we give credit to those who are juggling kids in school as well as responsibilities with their job. And for Councillor Dwyer, it's kids in school, responsibility of a job, and the role of a councillor that obviously you're good at multitasking to manage all of these things. So I guess one in school, I guess, right? But so those are it's a challenging environment for everybody, and I guess we appreciate the work that our staff do and how they adapt to make sure that the business of the community, the business of the town can continue to move forward. So with that, we've been an hour, and I'm not aware of any additional questions. Are there any further comments from any member of council or staff? Have we missed anything? Or anyone who's watching want to submit a question before we perhaps even wrap up early?
Mayor Panko?
Treasurer Cosile, sorry, first.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to reiterate when you had mentioned about the potential tax rate increase, the other component part of that calculation is education tax rates. They have been progressively going down since 2013, and they will again this year. We just don't have those figures as of yet, and it may not happen for the third draft, but they have been going down consistently. So the net impact will be less than what we're proposing tonight. So,
thank you for that clarification. And someone else spoke. Was that Councillor Brennan?
Yeah, just to say, if we do end up early, we can maybe post something on the Facebook page that if you missed the meeting, please submit questions to any or all of us, and we want to hear from them if they've missed this. But I suspect that they, if they're not here now, they probably won't be. So, but it was good. It was a good meeting.
Well, I reinforce that I know all of us have that open door policy. Maybe not open door during COVID, but email us, call us, reach out to us. We're all available to answer questions, and we always want to make sure we communicate as effectively as possible and answer questions, add clarity as needed. We missed anything? I see some heads saying no, we haven't missed anything. Okay, well, at that, I guess we'd like to thank those who participated, those who are watching at home, thank the staff who've been here tonight after our committee of the whole meeting last night, and for Councillor McKenna and I, we've got county council committee meetings tomorrow night, so it's been a busy week, and I guess despite COVID, we all have responsibilities about all the things we need to do, and we'll keep moving the objectives and our strategic plan forward. So thanks everyone for listening, and again, anything that if a question comes up that you have not heard answered tonight, feel free to reach out to any or all of us. At that, Dave, I will turn it back to you. Or sorry, I guess I better seek a motion for adjournment. Moved by Councillor Dwyer, second by Councillor McGuire. All in favor? We'll consider that adjournment. Good night.